ideas as pathogens.
Yeah, you said that one caught your eye
Mm.
last time. I talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
I was just thinking about that because I remember probably from Peterson that in times of plague, um, personality, the average personality of people in a nation tends to shift more right wing.
Mm.
They tend to become very pro tradition, pro authority, and pro closed borders, and they start being very, my tribe versus your tribe about everything.
Mm.
And it's made me it's made me wonder if no, I don't even know if it's wonder or if it's a no, that in doing so you also treat new ideas as foreigners effectively in the same perspective. These are new, these are dangerous, these are changes to the established order. And because we're in a time of like pathogen and plague, changes to the established order are deadly.
Mm.
So then you get like a clamp down on what's acceptable during times of maybe more generally unrest, but
Mm.
plague as well.
Like
And I
whenever
was wondering if that sort of explains a lot of the cancel culture stuff.
I didn't put
It's
these
really
on,
big.
so they're going to be cutting out.
Professional. Yeah, I was just wondering if that interacts at all with the cancel culture stuff. Because even though they're sort of traditionally from a left wing source ideologically, although in saying that all of Western thought is traditionally from a left wing source ideologically, even the right wing people are just conserving what liberalism was 60 years ago. They're not actually right wing people. Nevertheless, the same tendency is cropped up there.
Mm.
They're very hard line about this is what our nation is. We cannot deviate from that, and we all have to sacrifice everything to hold together the state of the nation because we're like under threat.
I think I agree with some of it, and I think some of it I'd draw a bit differently. But
No,
regarding the cancel culture, um, I think you're right that in times of stress or perceived stress, the focus becomes more uh, don't rock the boat because we're close to sinking. And like you had the baby boomers and the period of explosive growth that came out of that in many fields. And then that generation that grew up in that period, if I get the timings right, end up doing the hippie thing. And that's like new ideas and all because it's like this perceived stability. So you can experiment with rocking the boat a little bit to see if things work. And a lot of it didn't work, of course, because you have a new idea, it's almost certainly not going to work. But you need new ideas because old ideas stop working sometimes. And then I'm not sure how much of the instability in the woke worldview is, or perceived instability in the world is ideologically sourced and how much of it is sort of psychologically misplaced. As in, things are unstable, and that's a true sense, but then it's your fault. And that's just trying to assign the blame to whoever's easiest.
yeah, that's what I was meaning. I wasn't trying to say that the source and the reaction come from the same field.
Mm. Yeah.
Simply that when you have a state where people are experiencing this feeling of it's dangerous times, um, I think there's something to do with the pathogen specifically rather than just dangerous in general. Something about closing down and locking down in that circumstance. And I wonder if the modern mind treats ideas as pathogens in the same way, instinctively.
Mm. So it's not so much
Because
the modern mind.
no, it would be developed over time, but I think
Mm.
it's probably slightly more of a modern phenomenon than an ancient one, just from cumulative experience with pathogens and the spreading of ideas and how that changes a culture. That's sort of more applicable to an age in which human beings have, well, more human beings in a given culture.
Mm. And abstracting out the concept of an idea as opposed to an individual performing an action.
Yeah,
Where
and that's
previously,
more recent as well.
yeah, previously it would
I
have been
think it's more.
the
I do
individuals
think
who
it's
you clamped on.
subconscious, though. I think it would be subconscious, all of this.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think there's something there that I think that it's sort of developed in people. I've been thinking about. Well, you see it all the time about people not even wanting to hear the opposing side,
Mm.
and if that's the case, then you are afraid that ideas spread. It's not the logic of a rationalist who would say, may the best idea win, and you can challenge me and I'll accept it. It's more of someone who's like, no, I don't want to even consider it. I don't want it to even have a root hold in me because it may spread into me, and that would be a danger to my tribe. And then it's hardline and aggression response, which is what you would do with pathogen.
Mm.
You destroy things in that scenario. I'm wondering if the subconscious mind is starting to grapple um, with memes effectively in the
Because you
physical
don't need
sense.
you don't need to comprehend the idea of a pathogen on a subconscious level in order to understand that conditions can be contagious. You can have physical conditions that are contagious, and that's old enough to be physiologically embedded.
Mm.
And it
The
doesn't take,
subconscious would recognize the pattern first anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you recognize a pattern of behavior as toxic. I wonder if, like, the
Toxic.
difference in reaction.
That's an interesting word
Hmm,
for this scenario. That just struck me. Toxic is the word that's generally used for unacceptable ideas. A harmful substance, when come in contact with, can cause injury or death.
toxic
I don't know.
makes
Something about that just
masculinity.
clicked. Is
Yeah.
is that seems almost on point with this. And then we have the other half of things going viral.
Mm.
Like these language terms are almost painting the picture for us.
I wonder if there's also a perceived vulnerability at play. Like the people on the right who are fighting in these spaces are going out, and Ben Shapiro or his associates going out and having a discussion on a college campus. It's like going into the enemy territory, you could say, and saying, "Come at me, I will argue you." And compare that to the "We will not let you speak. We will shut you down. We will isolate and contain you."
Yeah,
It's like
we
there's
we will
also,
quarantine this space
yeah, but the people doing the quarantining perceive themselves. Hang on a minute. Do they
as
perceive
victims.
themselves as weak and
Yep,
victims? Yeah,
yep,
yeah. But also like defenders of perceived weak. It's an interplay together. Like we are the weak,
yep.
and you're a threat to us by challenging that weakness.
I think that is the fundamental difference between a person who is left wing by nature or right wing by nature.
Hmm.
Is whether you identify yourself as one of the victims or whether you identify yourself as one of the victors. I think left
Mm.
wing people will go, I am a victim. I am with the victims. I care about the plight of the victims. Whereas I think right wing people think more in terms of, like, I am a victor. I am successful. I succeed. And I should be allowed to succeed. And I think
Mm.
that's the fundamental opposite. So when you're saying that left wing people, yeah, they're shutting down because they feel like I need to be protected and I need to protect these people. It's because they believe genuinely that they are victims.
And so, from the group mindset, telling those individuals that you can be powerful and it is good to be powerful when within the leftist mindset, very broad strokes of the brush, of course, but within the leftist mindset, the powerful are by definition the oppressors
Hmm.
and the evil. Then to tell an individual that no, to be weak is to be harmless is not good. To be powerful and controlled is good. Then individuals try that out and find it makes their life better. And then that moves their mindset into what correlates with the right end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think there's the fundamental sense of, well, there's the zero sum problem, which a lot of this thinking is based on. But if you tell someone who is in that state of mind, you can be and you should be powerful, I think their immediate emotional reaction is like, but the powerful have always abused me. I don't want to be an abuser. I don't want
Hmm.
to be one of them.
To be powerful is to have power over someone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
the view. The If someone else has something, it means that someone else doesn't, or I don't. And that's where they get the, you took that from me kind of mentality. I don't know how much of it can be changed. I think a lot of it is based on personality, which is just sort of your roll of the dice, upbringing and birth kind of problem. Genetics determining.
I don't think it's so much about changing that aspect of it. It's a very reactionary process, and it will react to the circumstances. And at the moment, reacting by emphasizing your victimhood is profitable in various senses.
I don't I don't think it's a matter of incentive. I think that's not I think that's making it worse. But I
Mm.
think it's a matter of emotional tendency. If you heard a story where there was like a winner and a loser in the story, I think it's more about emotionally which one do you feel like, which person in the story do you feel like is you? Are you going to feel
Mm.
more pain because of the pain of the person who lost? Or are you going to feel like how that guy won? That's awesome. And I think that's the distinction. And I don't I don't know how much can be changed about a person. I'm really starting to think that genetics plays an immense role in shaping everything about a human being. And I think that that's something that modern culture, and particularly modern scientific culture, does not want to touch.
Mm.
I got this
Yeah.
feeling that it's sort of been like ignored and pushed to the side, and it's going to come back with a vengeance. Um, as scientists are touching on it, like I've heard a few people talking about it, and it turns out to be like a massive influence on our lives, way more than certainly way more than our culture is accepting.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, the return of the repress.
Yeah, I do worry how that's going to shake out if it's not managed and not spoken about openly, because you're going to get sort of the underground. people talking about it, which is not good for
Mm.
obvious reasons.
Yeah. So I think it's worth us nuancing the thought space a little bit. That
It needs to be brought into the light, and it needs to be helped. You know what I find is really interesting, actually,
mm,
now that I think about it, is that there's a mismatch here.
mm,
So you've got left wing people and you've got right wing people. Left wing people are all about like helping the poor, helping the downtrodden, helping the not successful, and saying that hey, the more successful people should like help these other people. And at the same time, they also believe fundamentally that there is no difference between any of the people. That we're all like born relatively blank slate and it's just a matter of our environment and oh, if I had gone to that better school or if I had a rich father or whatever, I'd be up there too. And then the right is the inverse. They're not so concerned about the ones who fail. They're like, oh, you just get your shit together. And they're saying that the people who succeed should be allowed to succeed because they fuel the whole system
mm.
and you can't punish them because you want to have the right incentives. But they are also the ones who acknowledge the inherent differences between people. And these things seem really contradictory to me. Like if there is inherent differences in people that helps one person succeed and the other person fail, and it's not their fault that they have those differences, shouldn't you want to help the person who failed? And shouldn't the person who succeeded be obligated to help them because it's not their fault, because it's determined to a large extent? I feel like those beliefs are mismatched. If you're going to have the whole laissez-faire, anyone should do anything, I feel like that's should be based on the blank slate view or be associated with it. And I feel like if you're going to be all redistributionist and social safety net, then you should be acknowledging the differences in genetics and in IQ and conscientiousness and orderliness and all of that. But they don't. It's the opposite.
Which side of the
Although I
political
suppose that's the don't want to hurt the feelings short term problem.
mm, which side of the political spectrum was eugenics on when it was a thing?
Left wing. It was a progressive idea.
So
They went hard on that. But then again, you know,
rebound from that possibly, in the sense of you cannot say that someone's path is. Hang on, no, like, it's a rejection of limitation. That the idea that there is a limit to that there are any inherent limits in the world that we must work within and negotiate with. Like if you look at economic theory, um, the right is sort of we like the status quo, we can work within it and progress in it. So we want to keep business as usual going. The left, oh, it is contradictory in a few ways, I think, but that's to be expected. It's especially if you have a rejection of some degree of critical thinking. But
yeah,
the rejection of limits in favor of progress, in favor of glorification of advancements.
the rejection
Like,
of reality in favor of idealism.
The idea that we can have infinite growth on a finite planet type thing.
What was that idea? That line. It's really convenient to assume that all humanity is a blank slate if what you really fundamentally want to do is reshape all humanity in your image. I think that accounts for a lot of the, all humans are blank slates idea, because that just gives you an excuse.
And it also means you can say that if someone doesn't do or be what you consider good, then there's no inherent reason for that except for
Oh,
their evilness.
and it's their fault, right? That's
Mm.
how they. That's how they. That I think that explains it more than anything.
Mm.
Because if you take that view, the blank slate view, then it's about morality, not about economics. That's the primary motivation. You are either one of the good people and you've got there because of your own, instinct and drive and being a moral person, or you're one of the bad people and you got there because it's your fault. And if you have that set up, then you can persecute the bad people because it's all their fault. There's no determinism there. Yes, they were shaped by their environment, but you could always choose to change it. And we are the angels because we chose to become this way because it's a blank slate. And that also
Yeah.
gives us the moral authority to go after them and try and change them.
Mm. And that's heavily reinforced by uh, the dearth of, in a somewhat precise sense, mythological diversity. Like, in the sense that our brain thinks in patterns of behavior that we learn as stories, and the old stories from other civilizations we refer to as myths, which you can say that um, certain Greek myths never occurred, but what was the one who flew too close to the sun? Um,
I don't remember.
yeah, but the one where a father and son are escaping from some island, make some wings, and the sun flies too high, close to the sun, and the wings melt and he falls and dies. It's a story of hubris leading to death. Like there's a pattern underlying that, which is expressed in everyday life. And if you have a lot of different myths, then you have a lot of different patterns to use for the pattern recognition of your subconscious to see, oh, this is that pattern. Oh, wait, no, that bit's not making sense. Oh, it's this pattern. And you can navigate with those as guidance, where if you only have the good guys win because they're good, the bad guys lose because they're bad, and things will be all right in the end and happily ever after. The
Mm,
monomyth, the progress myth of good will happen to good people, and main character is good person.
yeah, yeah.
And
There's no line in the middle. There's no shadow part of that.
mm, yeah, like how many characters in Greek myth are nominally the main character and so generally trying to be good, but still do some pretty nasty things? Like how many
Yeah,
people did Achilles kill?
yeah. Everyone's a bit of a bastard in old biblical stories too.
Mm,
And I think that's the point of like, you don't have to be perfect to be saved, kind of thing.
mm,
I think I think a way around the economic problem for the lefties like that. So they've got this moral set up with the blank slate view, so you can blame them. That's primary importance because it comes before the belief in, determinism of outcomes for underprivileged people. Um, they can flip it on its head and go, well, those evil people succeed because they play evil games. And we moral people, we're poor because we won't play those games because we're better than it. And then all of a sudden you've got moral justification for being poor
mm,
because those evil capitalists have taken all of the money. And therefore they should give it back to us and give it back to the good people who aren't, raping the planet or whatever.
mm,
And that way they can use the blank slate view to persecute their enemies and then also get the redistribution that they want without having to acknowledge that actually you're not succeeding in life because you're dealt a bad hand of cards and you're kind of, say, like genetically a failure. Because that hurts.
yeah.
It hurts to think about that for yourself, and it sure as shit is not something that a left wing person wants to say to someone who is, not succeeding because of the toxic compassion thing, prioritizing short term emotional comfort to make them feel like I'm the moral person by making you feel great.
Mm.
Words as tools and weapons, not as truth.
And then you get a few psychopaths in the mix who, in the technical sense,
Mm.
who see the ability to manipulate that system, manipulate that compassion. Like there was someone recently who I only saw a mention of it, but apparently this woman had accused a bunch of black guys of beating her up while some other guys just stood around and watched. And a highly disagreeable white woman who likes to talk about such things had said, "This story doesn't stack up. I don't think I believe her when she says she was raped."
Mm.
Um, and she'd got lambasted. And then the clip I saw was her saying, "I want an apology," because she's been arrested for fraud from what she was doing and falsely accusing people. And she had a string of previous GoFundMes on the same premise, and then pointing out, hang on, she's the racist one. She's saying all these terrible things about black men.
Yeah.
I was just saying, check someone's story.
Yeah, it's really easy to run a scam when you paint yourself as the moral savior of victims.
Mm,
People don't look too closely at what you're doing. It's a
yeah.
charity problem.
It's like that movie, The Invention of Lying.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
ridiculous one, that. A
But it's
little
like if
bit
you,
on the nose attacking religion, but, you know.
yeah, but the premise of one liar in a world where no one has ever thought of lying, um, that person can do anything.
Yeah, and we would translate that to our day and age to, you know, if I'm on the left-wing side of the spectrum and I've bought everything, obviously there's left-leaning people who are not, you know, stupid, effectively.
Mm,
Yeah, if I'm on that side of the spectrum and I've bought everything, then someone who's on my team isn't a bad person because we're all the good people, which means whatever someone on my team says is true.
mm.
Sure, I'll donate to that cause. And then, oh, this person on my side said this thing in a public political space. They're right. And the people disagreeing with them, they're evil. Even if it's wrong, it doesn't
Mm.
matter. It becomes team sports too quickly.
But it's a bad
No,
strategy long term. It doesn't hold up to the rigors of real life.
no.
So
It's
they add the
interesting that
shouting.
they used to be the side that, well, they pushed for eugenics, which is obviously not good, but they were recognizing the differences between people, and they were trying to, at the start at least, use that to help the underprivileged people. First, to pick out people who have exceptional talent and skill from the lower classes, give them opportunity to succeed, and therefore make the society more efficient, which is
Mm.
a really good idea. Like the fact that we don't IQ test every child in school at when they're like 16 is kind of dumb, or even younger, because then we could put them on a track with some public funding and get them straight up to university, and then we have like far more physicists and engineers. Obviously, IQ is not everything, but
Taking the people
anyway,
who are more inclined towards trades and giving them support, both
yeah,
emotional, intellectual, and practical support to say, this is a reasonable path for you. Like,
yeah,
America have a system a bit like that, I think, like vocational something.
yeah, but it's all choice based. You've got the SAT, which determines a lot of it, but
Mm.
we don't have anything like that. See, already my left wing heart has like a little bit of a pain attack of like, no, you can't just judge someone and then put them onto a life track. It's got to be left up to their choice, and it sort of comes down to we want equal opportunities for all fundamentally, but some people are going to unequally succeed at those equal opportunities, and that's painful for a lot of people.
So how do you deal with the, for want of a better phrase, false positives and negatives in that sort of testing?
I don't know.
Mm.
I really don't. This is my point about, how far behind science is culture. We do not think at all about genetic determinism in culture, like at all. And because of that, we blame everyone for their failures. Like you see someone failing at life in modern day, we think, oh, that person's a loser. Like that's the cognitive thought. And way back in the day, when people thought about these kinds of things in Greece and Rome, they called them unfortunates. It's not really their fault. It's sort of Lady Fortuna has not blessed them.
Which is almost a better view. It
Mm,
feels better. It's like a fickle, somewhat arbitrary power has decided not to give you things. That's a shame. I might offer you a hand up if you get in a position to take it, but I don't sit there blaming you for your misfortunes.
mm. I think
Mm,
that's why most religions are always, particularly Christianity, and so most religions, have been really emphasizing on like, we're always going to have the poor people and you need to help them. Like you
mm.
should be helping them. Sorry, I can hear my cat outside the door trying to get in. Um, I think that this might actually be a way to unify the left and right in a lot of ways. Because the right wing people have this thing of like the successful should be allowed to succeed and they shouldn't be held down because everyone wants to strive for that and equal opportunities and everything. And then they also have this idea of, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. If you're failing in life, that's your fault and you need to get your shit together. But they also recognize reality far more than lefties. They're way more willing to recognize something like genetic differences in the ability to be productive or genetic differences in intelligence or interest or even like stress response is a killer for sure. And that's going to have a massive outsized impact on, well, your whole life and your ability to work effectively. Memory failure, all sorts of things. And left wing type people want to help the plight of the oppressed. They want to help lift them up. And you could convince both sides to want to help the poor and impoverished if you have the frame of it's not their fault. Not because our society is evil and because of that people are poor, which is the current left wing narrative. Capitalism is evil and that's why everyone's poor. Very few people are, but you get my point. But if that narrative was, look, these people just did not win the genetic lottery, they've got really low conscientiousness, they're not super intelligent or creative. And because of that, they will always struggle in everything they try and do. And that's really not great. We should try and find a place for them in society where they can do something that they enjoy and that's useful. And maybe we should do a little bit of redistribution from those who are born with like 99th percentile off the chart for everything and are running around with like millions of dollars trying to tax shelter it.
I think there's another thing in there, like it's not their fault thing. When the reason for things going wrong is genetic, is very similar to it's not their fault thing when the reason for things going wrong is evil capitalists. The solution, like, even if you've got a bad genetic card and bad circumstances in your upbringing and so on, you still need to take personal responsibility for that, which is almost contradictory in the phrasing or thought. And I think that a lot of it comes down to, in a broader sense, what we've talked about before, that we need the conversation between the left and the right, because neither have the answer
Mm,
on their own.
yeah,
And we need
yeah,
them talking to each other
we need the culture to be unified on
in its
reality.
divisive discussions.
Yeah, yeah, we can't
Yeah.
have two separate realities within a nation. It's not going to work.
Mm.
We could solve many of our problems, like you're saying, if we could get both sides to talk to each other and come to a consensus on what reality is. The political system is not designed for people to talk to each other.
There's the idea of people's circumstances not being their fault as a whole statement. It's not complete. It's not.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't hit the nail on the head. Like there's.
It's not an absolute, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, this isn't 100% genetic determinism. That's not
Mm.
how that works. But it's a
It's not
sizable
nature
amount.
or nurture determining your outcome. Like I think the recognition that they contribute mightily is necessary.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's only by recognizing that and acting intelligently in response to it that you can rectify any imbalances from that. It's like, here is my heritage. Here is what I have inherited from my upbringing, from my genetics, from everything. That's mine.
Yeah.
Bugger. It's rubbish. And so on. Like growing up around drugs or whatever, or it's like that can put you on a really dark path and so on. There's any litany of things that can put you on a bad path in life. That's yours now. You've got to deal with it. There are certainly people who will try and help you, but those who do that, the words ignorant or innocently come naively. That's it. Those who try and help you naively probably won't be able to. Those who try and help you not naively, a little bit cynically, aware of the potential pitfalls, like people who have helped lots of people out of drugs, will do it cautiously because it's dangerous to help someone who's not ready to be helped.
Yeah, we want cultural understanding on this so that people aren't judging as well.
Mm.
Because it's very easy in the current worldview of like, particularly in the right wing worldview of people who are successful have earned it, and people who are not have not earned it because they are not good enough or whatever.
Mm.
It's very easy to judge the poor or judge the drug addict. It's like it's your fault. You're a failure. You're just a terrible person. Whereas if
Mm.
we can have a cultural understanding, we can be way more sympathetic to these people. And in that frame, I think it would make it a lot easier for the people themselves to take action and take responsibility for their circumstances.
Mm. Which is that almost in today's world, it's a very right wing thing because why? Why? Because if you're taking responsibility and if you're owning your misfortunes, yeah, your misfortunes as
Yeah,
much as your bad choices.
yeah,
If you're owning your misfortunes, then you can't be a victim.
yeah, because you can't blame someone else. You're not saying the culture's evil. You're not saying it's because I'm the wrong race or the wrong gender or whatever. It's like,
Mm.
this is just the hand I was dealt. It's not anyone else's fault. It's just genetics. And I'm in this bad circumstance, economically, or I'm in a bad neighborhood or something, which is probably equally to do with genetics and my parents and all of that. And you can't blame them. That's not fair. You can't blame society because society doesn't shape your genetics, really. Your genetics
There's
shapes a society the other way around.
there are certainly individual cases or many individual circumstances where you could point to an individual who has contributed to your misfortune greatly, like someone breaks in and steals the things you've been working towards to start your own business.
Mm.
That's a kick in the nuts. And it sucks, and you might be able to go through not retributive, restorative justice or something to try and get it back. But if you then say these circumstances are that person's fault, not mine, it's like, okay, sure, that makes you feel better because you can point the blame over there. And it's even true to a degree. Does it help?
It
Does it?
robs you of the opportunity to change things because now
Yeah.
it's someone else's problem.
It's like don't use the form of hope that's I have no agency. I'm sitting here hoping someone will help me. Use the form of hope that is things are bad. I
Yeah,
have hope. I can continue trying to make it better.
it's the serenity prayer, isn't it?
I'm not familiar with that. Sounds good.
Um, God grant me the wisdom to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Mm.
And I think there's true, real fundamental ideas in there. It's like, look, there are things you can't change. You just have to let go of that. But anything that is in your control, have it in your control. And if
And
it's not in your control, let it go.
the more you learn to change the things that are in your control, which might be almost nothing to start with, the
You
more
can
you
grab more
can,
things.
yeah, clean
Yeah,
your room.
exactly. Yeah. You're growing your sphere of influence and control in the world. And you do that by taking more responsibility for things and acting on them. It's far better to take responsibility for things that are not your control than it is to give up responsibility for things that are. So you can err on that side. Obviously, you can go too far and you want to sort of like minimal viable product at the start. You want to keep it small, you want to do the basics. And once you've got them down, you just
Mm.
slowly expand.
And
Clean your room. Exactly.
there's the temptation to think that, and I bring this up because I see it as something that I fall prey to. There's the temptation to thinking, oh, I'll take this responsibility and that one, that one, that one, and I'll do all those things, and you forget about the pile of mess that's right here.
Yeah.
I tend to do that a bit.
And then yeah, that probably comes towards the grandiosity part. I'm the
Mm,
kind of person who only thinks about the biggest issues affecting the planet. And because of that, I'm the greatest kind of savior there ever was because I have the right answers and I'm a genius.
mm.
But I'm also a bastard to like my brother and sister and wife and child. And my house is a mess and I don't help anyone and I'm like stealing from people. But I'm a good person because I care about saving the planet.
Mm.
You start where you are.
Like there was an MP who got kicked out recently for having shoplifted, and it's like first it was just one. There was she's overseas at the moment. We'll deal with it when she gets back. There was another one, and it sounds like there's been a whole bunch more come out.
Wow, that's dumb.
Yeah, she was in the Green Party.
Yeah, well, somehow that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, if you elevate the things you're concerned about to the greatest catastrophe that ever existed, which is the apocalypse, and then you
Mm,
proclaim yourself as the savior to prevent that, you've got all of this moral effort without ever actually having done anything. And your entire local environment can go to hell, but you're still the savior because you care about like the globe and the biggest global problems.
mm. And the idols in the celebrity sense that are held up in that sphere of like the climate change one in particular. The what's her name?
Thunberg.
Oh, yeah, Greta Thunberg. There was a little clip I saw of Jordan Peterson talking about her, and like, was it a 13-year-old girl who's worried about the environment, or and sees her parents being terrified of it, and she has immature terrors of it, and those are all reinforced by all the adults around her, and then she's put on the stage and talks to all these powerful people in the world who then respond affirmatively to all this. Like, how are you going to respond to that except constant existential terror?
Yeah, go
And
insane. Yeah,
yeah,
I, a 13-year-old autistic girl, am being put on the United Nations stage to talk about how bad the planet is. And there's like 150 leaders of countries praising me.
hmm,
And I've done nothing to deserve any of it. Like, that is going to make you as afraid as physically possible about the state of the world, because that means they've elevated you above them. So somehow you, 13-year-old autistic girl who's not bright at all, is like the smartest and most clever person when it comes to the environment, even though she's never studied it ever and only learnt about it from her parents who are afraid. She's going to go insane because you've set up a fake world for her. Everyone lied to her. That's a fake world. And when you set someone up in a fake world, they're going to go insane because that's what it means. You live in a fake world, you don't live in the real one.
It's just sad.
Yeah, it's a crime, as far as I'm concerned, to do something like that to someone for your own moral benefit. To look at me, I'm the greatest person for applauding this child that I'm abusing right now.
Yeah, it's the reinforcing someone's delusions is not helpful. And like even if that person is not delusional but merely mistaken in some ways, like it to sort of segue into this because it feels worthwhile. I've heard in a few cases, like in slightly medical TV show, as in drama type shows. Doc Martin is the one that comes to mind. Uh, it doesn't help someone who's delusional for you to reinforce their delusions. Okay, well, what does that mean? It's that,
not even a little bit.
yeah, like even if you sort of refusing to agree with their delusions is hurtful to them, the lack of reinforcement will stop them sliding further into it. And if you are mistaken, if you're the one who's wrong, or you're the one who's delusional, is speaking honestly about the way you see things wrong. Right? So you're talking to someone who might have the right track, you end up challenging each other. And then it's important to not assume that you're the one who's right. You could be the one with the delusion. Right? You talk to someone, they have a different point of view. It's like, okay, I disagree with you. I just no. And it's most difficult when you're talking to a close family member or spouse. Like, do you take it as I disagree with you, I disagree with this idea, or I don't
I
think
see the
that's
world differently.
yeah.
Yeah, this is how I see the world. This is how you see the world. There's only one world, and particularly there should be if we're in an intimate relationship. So we need to agree upon what the world is and how it acts and how we should react to it.
Yeah, and there's
Synchronizing your maps.
Emotions matter because this would become very emotional very quickly.
Yeah.
So you
Poking
need
at
to
axioms.
you need to take that into account, and it might be your emotions that end up coming up strong. So you need to understand it. But there was a conception of emotions versus facts. Emotions are the compass, facts are the map, and the map might say there's a chasm or a cliff in front of you, don't go that way. Emotions are saying the goal is over there on the other side of that chasm. That doesn't mean you run blindly at the chasm and spend all your money on a thing that's worthless or whatever. But it means that, okay, there is a reason why what's on the other side of the chasm is valuable, or a reason pulling us towards it, or it might be trying to push us away from something else. We need to look at the compass, move it around a bit, see how it responds, and take care of it. Like the emotions matter. They are the loudest way that the subconscious can make itself heard.
Mm.
And the subconscious knows a lot.
A lot more than us.
Yeah. But bringing the conscious and the subconscious into alignment is hard. It's probably right up there in terms of hardest things in life, quite
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah. trying to figure out
which is
how it was
saying
supposed
something. Yeah. And so if you're talking to someone with a fundamental worldview misalignment from you, like someone who is utterly convinced that climate change is on the one hand a conspiracy, and on the other hand the changes we've seen are just natural variations, and that following along with that is just playing into the hands of those who wish to manipulate us. And on the other hand, someone who's absolutely convinced that this is an existential threat to life on this planet, and if we don't stop it, everything will die and Earth will turn into Venus. Like, those are fundamentally incompatible worldviews. And from where I'm personally sitting, both are wrong.
Yeah.
But if you hold one of those views and you're talking to someone who holds a different one, just getting angry, which will be the most, which will be the strongest response you'll have, angry and dismissive, doesn't help either of you. If
It
you
depends.
can,
What is the goal of the conversation?
in my
Are
mind,
you
yeah,
there? Like I'm saying, when two people talk, is the goal to unify and agree on what is truth, to discover truth?
yeah, that's
Is the
it.
conversation an attempt to discover truth by recognizing I have information, you have information, let's exchange information continually until both of us agree and go, okay, I've heard all your information, you've heard all mine. Based on both of them and assuming both of them are true, this is the state of the world. Do we agree? Yes, yes. Awesome. That's pursuit of truth. Or is the point of the conversation to beat the other one? Is the point of it to come out and say, I'm right, I am moral, and you are not? Because if that's the motivation, if that's the intention, you'll never achieve anything. You'll be fighting forever. You'll lie to each other in order to attain victory in those circumstances, which is a lot of the problem in the political sphere these days. Are you using words as a tool in the pursuit of truth, or are you using words as a tool in the pursuit of victory?
And there's
Because
also,
one requires you to be true, and one opens the door to manipulation and deceit in order to win.
there's also the problem is not the problem, which, like, you have these two people come together, and one's saying that there is a cabal of global elites who are manipulating the world for their ends. Saying that people with power want to use that power for their own benefit doesn't feel that controversial, but there's a lot of room in that space.
Yeah, arguing
Say,
about different things.
yeah, but if what's the motivations of the person on the other side? Why do they think this is a big issue, and what are their concerns? Understanding the other person, even if you can't come to a consensus on truth, if you can come to an understanding of the other person's motivations, that can also be incredibly valuable. It's like, oh, this person honestly sees an existential threat to the future of all life, and that is terrifying to them. That sounds terrifying. I think it's false, but it sounds terrifying.
They must have some form of credible information in order to believe this. What is it that they're based on? Go after that. Not to prove them wrong, but to incorporate what they know into your worldview so you can be more correct. Like, do you want to be right or do you want to win?
Oh, yes.
Because those are
Oh,
not the same thing.
and if you pursue one, you lose the other. But you
Yes.
can't win by being right. You can't win the war. You might win the battle, but sometimes winning the battle means losing the war.
You're never 100% perfectly right about everything, even on something that you're very close to being spot on with. You can always be adjusted 1% here or there pick up information from someone else. Always.
And that's a fundamental truth based on the limitations of the human mind. It's not
Yeah.
like in the sense of we have a map of the world in our head, and a conceived structure by which we believe it operates. And the world is so much more complex than we are capable of understanding that there are going to be a ton of simplifications to get that structure built in your head.
Even to be
Therefore, it's
clear, I
wrong.
think, even if you are talking to someone who you know is incredibly stupid, who
Hmm.
you know knows nothing about the topic in which you know everything, you can still learn from them
Hmm.
because they're going to ask you questions. And
Hmm.
there is a very good chance that one of those questions is going to spark in you a thought of, actually, I don't know. Or, that puts a hole in something else in my little frame. So there's something here. You have to approach
Hmm.
people assuming you can learn from them,
Yeah.
trying to pursue truth. Because
I've
if you're not
started
trying to pursue, you're not going to find it.
mm, I've started trying to watch myself to see when I'm giving incoherent responses, like burbling away. So I'm using lots of big words, and it's like that's not really meaning anything. Like I had that last night. I was talking to some people, and I was trying to express some things about my last relationship, which we've been over. It was bad, um, and why I'm moving forward in a certain way, listening to certain advice with regards to finding a good relationship, to finding a good woman to have a good relationship with. And I was burbling. And in that burbling, I started saying, I don't understand this fully because I'm not making sense. And like being able to recognize that sort of thing, like even if the person who I was talking to didn't get anything I was saying, realizing that I couldn't articulate it to my own satisfaction is valuable. So I don't
Mm.
understand myself. I don't have good reasons why I'm doing certain things.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm in the subconscious problem again, where, we're like 10% visible to ourselves.
Hmm.
We got the iceberg problem. And then, we're trying to like figure out what else is going on from the bubbles that come up from it or whatever onto the surface. I'm trying to
Oh
think of
yeah,
an
I like
analogy.
that.
You were describing the facts versus emotions thing before,
Hmm.
and my mental image that came up immediately was like a small circle that's white in the middle, and then like a massive circle that's like sort of multicolored and gray, and somehow like projecting into the small circle,
Hmm.
trying
I
to
like.
figure out like your emotions are trying to like push little points up, trying to, because you can't fit all of that in the little circle. So how
Yeah,
does the little circle be aware of all of this?
I like
And
the
it's
iceberg
like
and bubbles.
anger. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's about right. It's like 10 to 20% is conscious mind, and everything else is unconscious.
yeah.
What's
And
that? Oh, what was that line? The three defeats of humanity. Um, was it realizing that we weren't at the center of the universe, realizing that we weren't like divinely created, we're just another animal, and then realizing we don't even have our hands on the wheel because we're unconscious creatures. And then we're just sitting there like, oh, okay, this is great. We're not, we're not the center of the universe. We're not even divine to be here. We're just an animal, and oh, fuck, I'm barely even in control myself as it is.
it's
Yay!
funny because
And then
um,
science has sort of
oh,
demolished a lot of the we are the. But this is the
I'd
thing.
like to segue
All of
into
that
those
is
for a minute.
true.
But
All of
yeah.
that is true. That 10% that we are in control of is, 10% more than any other creature ever, which is why all of the stories are like, we are the greatest thing, and we are like forging destiny, and we are conscious and in control.
Hmm.
And that's why all of our myths are about that. Yeah, it's only 10%. And I can guarantee you that that 10% is a hell of a lot more than it used to be, given that what we talked about last week. So, hold on to what we have.
Oh, I just got an image of here is the caveman with his rocks, and he's chipping away, making some obsidian tool, and it's like quite a skilled job, but it's like using his rocks. Here is the man in the concrete cave chipping his rock, and he's poking a keyboard. It's like you're still using a rock, you just tricked it into thinking by throwing some lightning at it.
Yeah, we're still got the paleo brain, effectively.
Yeah, yeah,
Memes, they've changed us quite a lot. I gotta
we've
give that
updated
credit.
the software. The hardware's the same, but the
Yeah.
software's rapidly changing.
Well, that's the advantage of human beings, is that we
Hmm.
can change the software. Yeah. Which is,
Hmm.
unbelievably valuable.
But the firmware, we keep thinking we can change the firmware, and that's a bit more difficult.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Hardware, software, and the unconscious is like firmware.
Yeah.
Uh, Almost like the unconscious is probably the OS. That's the operating system.
Hmm.
And that's like massive. And then we've got like the little program sitting on top. And we're like, I am everything there is. And then
Oh,
the operating system's like, yeah, no, you don't even touch bare metal.
I like the iceberg analogy because you know how icebergs roll sometimes as they melt?
Oh, yeah.
It's like as you're
Yeah, that's
burning
good.
the dead wood of your psychology, as you're stripping away the bits of yourself that don't make sense anymore, that's the bits you're consciously aware of that's poking up above the surface. Suddenly the iceberg shifts and a different bit's pointing out. And so I was like, wow, you changed. It's like, yeah, yeah, I don't know what
Sort of.
happened. Yeah, sort of. There's a lot of the same stuff still as the whole, but
A circle
different bits
inside
poking
the
up.
circle
Yeah.
Venn diagram thing. And my thought was like creative people, the circle inside the circle moves around the bigger circle more.
Mm.
And then more traditional people are like centered and move a little bit, but are like real stuck in a central point, which is why they have such a strong form of identity. And creative people are like, I don't even know who I am because it keeps changing every week. Ah.